Start with contracting sprites. Chapter 16. Wednesday, August 13th. Sunny. The 16th day after contracting silkworm baby. The second day of school. Sprite Stream started formal lessons. On the desk was a new book, Start from Contracting a Sprite, published by the Union of Sprite Trainers. It discussed how to grow from a beginner who just contracted a sprite to a real, qualified Sprite Trainer. This book wasn't as dull as most ordinary textbooks. Instead, it dived deep into the phases of Sprite Trainers and sprites using easily accessible language mixed with many well-known anecdotes of famous Sprite Trainers. Su Hao opened it and was immediately fully immersed in it. The ding-dong tones of intelligence points increasing echoed in his ears. It was double the joy. So wonderful and pleasant is the life of a Sprite Trainer. In the classroom, apart from students, there were still sprites, squatting, standing, or lying on the stomach beside their own Sprite Trainers. However, they were all quiet. Even the naughty sprites, which had only attended to their Sprite Trainers half-heartedly or gone off playing without returning the previous day, all looked completely good-natured now. Silkworm Baby was not an exception. Its big eyes looked from time to time toward the puppet, which was as tall as a person, in front. The puppet wore a dress with patterns of small flowers. There were silk strings tied to its hands and feet, suspending it in mid-air, held by a wooden hook the shape of a cross. Its eyes were lively and dynamic. They turned around and, from time to time, glanced toward the budding new sprites in the classroom. Marionette. It was the evolved form of a wooden puppet. Even without looking, Su Hao knew that it was the overbearing power the marionette exuded that put all the sprites in the classroom into a state of shock. It is fat. Silkworm Baby closed its eyes, opened them again, and closed them once more. Then, it kept crawling, until it was behind Su Hao, hiding itself. Su Hao. Old Chen was teaching calmly on the podium. Since everyone chose Sprite Stream, then you have only one purpose: to become a real Sprite Trainer. She paused. You should be clear about the condition to becoming a Sprite Trainer certified by the Union. That is to own an entry-level sprite. Then, what is an entry-level sprite? Old Chen's gaze swept around. Many classmates who were scared of being called up to answer the question hurried to bow down their heads. Su Hao was immersed in learning and remained immune to the powerful gaze of the form teacher. Old Chen didn't think about asking a question at all. When the spiritual force contained in a sprite reaches 100, it can start to try to compress the spiritual force energy in its body. The compressed spiritual force would have exponentially increased effectiveness, whether in applying unique skills or simple usage of spiritual force. Then, the sprite can truly be counted as entry-level. Sprites at their growing stage are in a period of rapid development. Many sprites don't get enough cultivation during the growing stage, specifically insufficient spiritual force intake. After they reach adulthood, if their spiritual force still hasn't reached 100 and their potential is exhausted, it will be challenging for them to break into entry level. The beginners in the class listened carefully and also understood why feeding jade powder to sprites was emphasized continuously. The chance for sprites that only ate normal food to break through was minimal. So long as you can train your sprite to entry level before the college entrance examination, you stand a very high chance of getting into a good sprite university. Old Chen said, those who can't break through but have a spiritual force of more than 90 still have a chance of entering sprite universities. In a word, if you don't want to be eliminated in the competition, you have to pay serious attention from today onwards. A classmate raised her hand shyly. Speak. Teacher, what level is your puppet sprite at? Old Chen snorted. You can even remember the name wrong. Go home and give your Sprite encyclopedia a good read. She continued to say, after entry level, sprites have elementary, intermediate, and advanced levels. Even higher up, there is the elite level. The same levels also go for Sprite Trainers. My Marionette is at advanced level, but these are not important to you guys, don't think too far. What you need to do at this stage is to set a solid foundation for the sprite. And before entry level, if one wants to, sprites can be categorized into several stages. The first stage is the initial growing stage, the level that your sprite is at. The second stage is when the spiritual force exceeds 30. The sprites can try to learn unique skills. Unique skills are a more advanced way to use spiritual force and the key to applying sprites' abilities. The third stage is when the spiritual force exceeds 60. The sprites can use multiple unique skills. Under the nourishment of spiritual force, the physical abilities of the sprite would also improve. The fourth stage is when the spiritual force reaches or exceeds 100. The sprites can start compressing spiritual force, and you can also start to design a battle tactics system for your sprites. My requirement to you all is to try to let your sprite's spiritual force reach 60 points by the end of this semester. To that end, apart from supplementing nourishment such as jade powder, you also need to do some corresponding training to fully tap the sprite's potential. It was pretty troublesome for others to test their sprite's spiritual force, as they had to go to corresponding institutions. Su Hao opened his interface and glanced at it. The statistics of Silkworm Baby were as following. Physique, 11. Spiritual force, 18. It doesn't seem too far from the 30 points of the first stage's spiritual force, right? There were very few classes for the sprite stream. Every day, they only had 2 to 3 classes that had to be taken in the classroom. Another was an outdoor lesson, teaching students how to train sprites. Su Hao also listened carefully. It had nothing to do with intelligence points. He felt that a lot of the knowledge opened up new doors for him. Just that. For the sprite cultivation plan, I still choose the interface. In the weeks afterward, everything started to get on track. On Monday, Silkworm Baby trained speed and endurance with the treadmill at the school. Long runs could no longer satisfy it. On Tuesday, Silkworm Baby used the wood column array at school to train speed and agility. On Wednesday, Su Hao used the hitting force tester to test the hitting force from Silkworm Baby's full force. The evaluation showed that it could break a small tree sapling as thick as the opening of a bowl. On Thursday, Silkworm Baby trained spiritual force at school. On Friday, Silkworm Baby. Of course, Su Hao played a crucial part in it, which let the seemingly ordinary training achieve extraordinary results. Gurgle, gur, gle. Silkworm Baby squirmed and moved. It made a faint sigh, going dizzy. When Silkworm Baby lost its fighting ability, Su Hao picked it up, stretched its body, and fixed it on the rack. He applied the painstakingly expensive spiritual medicine essential oil he had bought and then sprinkled some medicinal powder. He turned it over to sprinkle again, more evenly. Underneath the simply made rack, he unscrewed the stove and slowly baked it with low fire to improve Silkworm Baby's absorption of the medicine. Silkworm Baby, powerless to resist, let him do what he wanted, looking tired of its life. I'm already a useless silkworm. September 1st, the day that first and second graders started school. Su Hao opened Silkworm Baby's information. Its physique had grown to 18, and its spiritual force had actually reached 30, the second stage that old Chen had talked about. This was the most basic progress. Some hidden ones, those that wouldn't show on the interface, were similarly significant. For instance, the skin that was increasingly comparable to a cursed, cultivated from baking Silkworm Baby. Chapter 17. That night, Su Hao sat in front of the computer table, tapping on the keyboard. He was searching for information related to unique skills. A sprite that didn't master a unique skill wasn't a passable sprite. Old Chen had also said that when a sprite's spiritual force reached 30, it could try to learn unique skills. Yet the classes related to unique skills at school would only start in late October. Fortunately, the internet could help with anything. The categories of unique skills, their brief introductions and strengths and weaknesses could all be found online. Like sprites, unique skills were categorized by element. Usually, sprites could only have unique skills from the same element. If they learned across elements, the difficulty would increase drastically. Also, the powers when they used them would decrease drastically. Of course, it wasn't absolute. For example, the final evolved form of the little stone elephant, the elephant general, was famous for being able to learn unique skills from multiple elements. Elephant General could also learn non-earth element unique skills, such as fiery breaking hits and icy blade dash. Su Hao had long had plans on what to let Silkworm Baby learn unique skill, charging. Charging didn't belong to any element. Instead, it was a universal unique skill. Any sprite had the ability to learn it, and it was also one of the easiest unique skills to learn. And it wasn't weak. Presently, Silkworm Baby's main fighting method was hitting. Its speed was pretty fast, its hitting force was rather good, and its skin had even been strengthened. Once it learned charging, its battle power would definitely make a big leap. The learning of unique skills is also a way for sprites to deepen their use of spiritual force. It's best to start from the easy ones. Aside from charging, Su Hao also wanted Silkworm Baby to learn roaring. Roaring was similarly a universal unique skill. It was a way for sprites to make roars to scare their enemies. Unfortunately, the practical battle effectiveness of roaring was far inferior to charging. Su Hao wanted Silkworm Baby to learn it because, based on it, it could learn the more advanced unique skill, stunning. On top of using spiritual force, stunning also had some mental attributes. It would help Silkworm Baby evolve to Reverie Butterfly in the future. It's decided. We'll learn charging and roaring at the same time. In any case, these two unique skills have different directions, so they can totally be trained simultaneously. Charging and roaring were both common unique skills. The ways to train the sprite could be found on the internet. The first stage of the learning of charging is to make the sprite combine speed and strength and reach a certain standard. The second stage. In the process of high-speed running, use spiritual force to increase the speed of the sprite. The third stage. Familiarize with the usage of spiritual force and attach to the sprite a protective layer to release spiritual force at the instant of collision. It seems to be clear, logical, and organized. But in fact, there were no detailed instructions on how to combine speed and strength, how to use spiritual force, how to attach a protective layer, and so on. Whether or not the unique skill could be successfully learned was solely based on luck. That was all that he could find on the internet. More detailed and effective training methods would be core knowledge that only high-level sprite trainers, sects, and schools would possess. It wasn't impossible to try to find a way based on the vague and incomplete methods on the internet. Yet it was too ineffective. Su Hao wouldn't choose it. Ask the school? Ask his form teacher, Old Chen? It was actually workable. Uncity First High was, after all, the best high school in Uncity. It had to have a detailed learning method of basic unique skills like charging. Su Hao thought about it and still decided against asking Old Chen. It was not that he wanted to conceal his abilities. Silkworm Baby's strength right now had indeed surpassed many of its batchmates. But as compared to real rich kids or those with even better backgrounds, it was just so-so. It took a whole month to improve Silkworm Baby's 5 points of battle power to more than a dozen points. It was ordinary. It was normal. It was far from notoriously outstanding. Medium good at best. There was nothing worth concealing. Asking Old Chen for help could allow Su Hao to gain the learning method of charging, and Old Chen would like him more. However, after he got the method, was he to practice with what Old Chen gave him, or with the plans unlocked with intelligence points? Su Hao chose the latter. So asking Old Chen is giving myself trouble. Never mind. The interface appeared in front of Su Hao's eyes. On the top right corner, his intelligence points had already accumulated to 66 points. They, 6, in the cultivation plan, which earlier on he hadn't met the unlocking conditions after he went online to search the rough learning methods of charging and roaring had already become Cultivation Plan 1. Basic Cultivation, Unlocked. 2. 5. 6. Unique Skill Learning. Among the unique skills that could be unlocked right now, there were 2. Charging, unlock with 1 intelligence point. Roaring, unlock with 1 intelligence point. Surprised, Su Hao found it cheap. This was also the reason he didn't plan on asking old Chen for help. It's so cheap, why should I give myself extra trouble? Ding dong. 2 intelligence points were deducted. Instantly, some information rushed into his mind. I see. It seems that it's also not very difficult to let Silkworm Baby learn charging and roaring. Lake East Hill, at the back side of the hill. Su Hao felt very familiar, like he had come home. Only Silkworm Baby was sullen and unenthused. It could no longer play with those familiar sprite friends. Silkworm Baby, let's continue training for the unique skill charging. Gurgle Silkworm Baby replied with little energy. At first, Su Hao had actually taken Silkworm Baby to train in school. But he couldn't stand it that Silkworm Baby's hitting broke many trees in the school woods. Even though those woods were for sprite training in the first place, Su Hao still felt embarrassed. He was still too thin-skinned. There was also an open training field at school, but Su Hao felt that when Silkworm Baby was practicing charging, it wasn't a good practice if it didn't find something to hit. In the backside of the mountain, Su Hao cleared out an empty space about 20 meters long. At the end of it was a tree 3 to 4 meters tall. Silkworm Baby slowly moved to the empty space and prepared to start training. Su Hao looked and felt that this wouldn't do. This Silkworm Baby is too unmotivated. Though it practiced obediently under his intent gaze, it had no initiative. How many years would it take before it learned charging and roaring? This won't do. Silkworm Baby, so long as you learn to do charging, I'll bring you for a feast. Gurgle. Silkworm Baby's body shook. It turned around suddenly and looked at him with big, watery eyes. Are ye really? I've never had a feast, gurgle, gurgle. Of course, have I ever lied to you? Silkworm Baby thought about it. It seems that he really hasn't. It was immediately filled with motivation. Its fat body shook a little, bent slightly, and the light yellow figure rushed out instantly. Its speed got faster and faster. A layer of pale green halo formed with dispersed wood element spiritual force appeared on the surface of its body. Silkworm Baby's speed got faster again. Su Hao's eyes brightened. Indeed, under the lure of the feast, Silkworm Baby made a new breakthrough. Its usage of spiritual force became more advanced. It's not far from really learning to charge. Bang! Silkworm Baby didn't stop itself in time and bumped right onto the thick trunk of a tree more than 3 meters tall. At the moment that it hit, the pale green halo on its body broke first. Then, its fat body squeezed forward, like it was pressed into a pie, and bounced back suddenly. It bounced off a bit too far, flying out high. Su Hao hurried to run up and catch it. Soon, he and Silkworm Baby rolled onto the ground. Gurgle, at. Chapter 18. Cough, cough. Su Hao sat up from the ground and checked on Silkworm Baby's condition. It was okay. There wasn't much of a problem. There wasn't any serious injury for himself, but it was still a bit reckless. Fortunately, it was a Silkworm Baby, a sprite not too heavy and very soft. If it was a heavy little stone elephant or something with spikes all over the body like a hedgehog. Su Hao shook his head abruptly, not daring to think. Silkworm Baby suffered some injuries, which could no longer be self-healed with miraculous cure. Su Hao took the sprite injury medicine from his backpack and sprayed it on. The training surely couldn't be continued. To be safe, Su Hao brought Silkworm Baby to the Sprite Medical Center at Sprite Square. It's nothing serious, just a small injury. We've already applied some liquid medicine for Silkworm Baby, it will recover soon. The nurse lady carried a small bamboo basket, in which a curled up Silkworm Baby lay. Gurgle. Silkworm baby smelled the familiar smell, woke up from its sleep, opened its big watery eyes, and leaped onto him. Gurgle, O_O. The little guy was a bit down. We were training for unique skills, how did it end up like this? Su Hao scanned the QR code and paid for Silkworm baby's medical expenses. 50 yuan. He found it a bit expensive. But the original price was even higher, at a full 100. It was his status as a high school Sprite Trainer that gave him a 50% discount. If he was one of those Sprite Trainer interns in society, he'd have to pay the full price. No wonder most of the high-level Sprite Trainers graduated from Sprite universities. If one doesn't work hard in high school, they will end up only trying to feel like a Sprite Trainer on the simulator. But, so long as I pass the assessment for certifying Sprite Trainers and become a proud entry-level Sprite Trainer, I'd be able to use many basic facilities for free. All public battlefields could be used for free. Treatment for Sprites at the medical center would also be completely free unless the Sprite's injury was really bad. Su Hao was a little excited, just thinking about it. If I got to be an entry-level Sprite Trainer, would I no longer have to worry so much in my Sprite training? That's a bit too far away. Su Hao shook his head. However, he couldn't shake it. Oh, he forgot there was still a silkworm baby lying on his head. Gurgle. Silkworm baby, use charging. Gurgle, 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 gurgle. Silkworm baby's 8 short legs moved together, and its chubby body gradually accelerated. At the same time, more and more light green light dots started gathering about Silkworm baby, gradually covering it with a layer of light. Behind it, there was a tail formed by numerous light dots, like the tail of a comet. In front of it appeared a tree more than 3 meters tall. Silkworm baby didn't slow down but shouted and leaped up forcefully, like a cannonball. Gurgle. Bang. Su Hao's eyes widened. Accompanied by a sharp cracking sound, Silkworm baby, wrapped in the light green brilliance, broke the tree trunk in one hit. The light dots around its body became much more sparse. After it landed, it continued to drift over the ground covered by fallen leaves for 1 or 2 meters before stopping. Nevertheless, Silkworm baby was unscathed. The exertion of a force was mutual. However, when using charging, a protective film appeared on the surface of Silkworm baby's body to bear the force of the impact for it. You hurt. But I don't hurt. That's charging. Gurgle, gurgle. Silkworm baby called excitedly. The unique skill, charging, was learned. The day's failure didn't depress Silkworm baby but made it even more invested in a very rare way. Even Su Hao was surprised. It only started learning charging on the 2nd of September, and it's only been 5 days. This result should be better than average, right? After all, Silkworm baby didn't have any foundation for learning unique skills. In the end, it's still thanks to me for providing a sufficiently detailed training plan without any roundabout ways to waste energy. I'm the outstanding one, after all. The learning of roaring is less smooth. This skill was harder to train than charging, to begin with. Su Hao's request for Silkworm baby was to incorporate spiritual force into daily speech, lengthen the vowel, drag the gle for dozens of seconds, and, at best, call more fiercely, with a fierce facial expression. Gurgle. Silkworm baby stood upright and widened its eyes. Super fiercely. Su Hao stared at it, snapped a photo with his phone, and conveniently made it into a sticker. Then he pondered for 3 seconds. He felt that if he made Silkworm baby attack the enemy with roaring, it might as well use cute charm. Even if it couldn't get the opposite sprite off balance, it could get the Sprite Trainer off balance with its cuteness. It'd also be pretty good as this would be a direct attack on the Sprite Trainer, causing real damage. Silkworm baby's learning of charging wasn't the end, but simply a beginning. The obtainment of a unique skill included everything from entry level, to proficiency, to mastery. There was still a lot of effort that Silkworm baby needed to put in. However, Su Hao kept feeling that he had forgotten about something about Silkworm Baby. He glanced at Silkworm Baby. The little guy was working hard to practice charging. It was striving to level up its straight line charging into curvy and S-shaped charging. It looked very focused. Su Hao didn't say anything. He probably didn't forget anything after all. Thus, Su Hao threw it to the back of his mind. One night, Su Hao was pondering about the training direction for Silkworm Baby. Charging greatly improved Silkworm Baby's battle power, but it was very rigid to attack the enemy with charging. If it was targeted, it could still be easily defeated unless he was to combine it with other unique skills to construct a tactical system specially for Silkworm Baby. But that was for the future. Even if it learned other unique skills, Silkworm Baby couldn't use so many of them before it used up its spiritual force. I can only work on the charging skill itself. Su Hao pondered. He checked out some information online. To be able to make a slight turn when using the skill charging is already a sign of proficiency in usage. To achieve a Z-shaped charging means that the sprite's usage of charging is already very proficient. It was hard to improve any further, but Su Hao wasn't satisfied. Silkworm Baby right now can only apply charging twice with full force. Once the charging fails, Silkworm Baby will fall into a very passive position. Can the charging be improved so that it can be activated and deactivated at any moment? When it fails, it can stop further loss in time and reduce spiritual force consumption and preserve the spiritual force that gathers around the body after cancelling. Then when it applies charging again, the process of building up energy can be bypassed. The idea is beautiful, but how to improve? Where can I start? Su Hao scratched his head. Experienced sprite trainers have enough experience to have the ability to improve unique skills, but I'm just a newbie. A newbie who had only contracted a sprite for 1.5 months. Su Hao looked at Silkworm Baby and sighed. Silkworm, why can't you learn to improve unique skills yourself? Silkworm Baby, which was just sitting in the living room watching TV with Su Hao's parents, shook its head a little, gave the bedroom a confused look, then turned back to stare at the TV. In the bedroom, Su Hao was spinning his ballpoint pen. After cracking his brain to think for a long while. Slap! He slapped the ballpoint pen down on the table, and decisively opened the interface. The training plan was opened. Unique skill learning was opened. He saw charging, unlocked, improved charging, unlock with 2 intelligence points. Su Hao checked on the direction of improvement. Indeed, the interface understood his mind perfectly. Unlock all for me. Chapter 19. Su Hao scribbled down the improvement plan of charging on draft paper. First, he drew an oval to represent Silkworm Baby and then drew an arrow to represent charging. The improved plan was instilled in his mind, so he was full of ideas and wrote extra smoothly. Within a few minutes, he drew out a picture of Silkworm Baby charging. It showed when to accumulate energy, when to accelerate, when to release the momentum, and when to accelerate again. More than a dozen threads intertwined, looking slightly complex. Silkworm Baby came to Su Hao. Silkworm Baby stared at this picture and slowly made a. Su Hao understood. It must be that Silkworm Baby's education level was too low, and that's why it couldn't understand the drawings he made. It seems that it's time to put the study of language, mathematics, and the sciences on the agenda. It should be a cultured sprite. Silkworm Baby stared at him and made 2 unhappy calls before slipping back into the living room. Humph! Wasting my TV time. How 1, Mom Su's voice came from the living room. Silkworm Baby didn't report on him, right? Su Hao's drawing hand froze. He thought about it and realized it couldn't be. Mom shouldn't be able to understand what Silkworm Baby is saying. Su Hao headed to the living room. His parents were sitting on the sofa watching TV, with the Silkworm Baby squatting between them. Mom Su said, "Don't go to the Lake East Hill area anymore." What happened? Mom Su pointed at the TV, showing the nighttime news broadcast of City Channel. Recently, 2 wanted Sprite Trainer criminals on the run committed crimes in City. One of them is about 1.8 meters tall, with a burn scar on his right cheek, and he brings with him a wood mantis. The other wanted criminal is a bit more than 1.6 meters, with a short and fat statue, bringing with him a little ground wolf. Both wanted criminals are Sprite trainers who contracted sprites, with a high danger level. Citizens, please be careful when you are out. If you have any clues, please call. The pictures of the wanted criminals, Chen and Wang, were shown on the screen. Su Hao gave them several glances. They are actually Sprite Trainer criminals. Ordinary criminals were common, but not Sprite Trainer criminals. Sprite Trainers were rare figures, to begin with. Compared with ordinary people, bringing a sprite was more eye-catching, making it harder to hide. Su Hao estimated that it was unlikely that those 2 wanted criminals would enter the city. And being both Sprite Trainers, they were a great threat to society. The Sprite Trainer Association of City was sure to invest forces into the search, and they would be able to capture them in a short time. Thus, he didn't care too much about it. He didn't plan on going to remote areas like the backside of Lake East Hill again. There were thousands of rules for being a Sprite Trainer, and safety was the most important. Life mattered more than anything. Silkworm Baby had already learned the unique skill charging. The next step was to master charging and learn the improved version charging. It made little difference whether they went to Lake East Hill or not. I see. I will travel to school and nowhere else during this period. You 2 don't need to worry. The society is stable now. It's not the era when sprites first appeared anymore. Those 2 wanted Sprite Trainer won't be out there for long. Su Hao had looked at the history textbook. He had also checked up some resources. In the era when the Sprite Trainers had first appeared, because individuals had obtained powers capable of fighting against guns, society had been in turmoil for a long time. Every country had been madly piling up resources, wanting to cultivate top Sprite Trainers who could turn the tide of war. In particular, the 2 superpowers at that time had constantly been competing in Sprite training powers. One day, one of them would discover one new Sprite species, the next day, the other would discover 2. When one cultivated a Heavenly King level Sprite Trainer, the other would not be content falling behind. They had been crossing swords both on the surface and in secret. The tension had been immense, and it had almost triggered World War III. Afterward, the tension between the 2 superpowers was reduced a lot. What's more, the supranational organization, Union of Sprite Trainers, had suddenly been established, controlling all certified Sprite Trainers in the world. In the specifics, each country still managed its affairs and occupied a certain number of seats in the Union according to its national strength and strength of its Sprite Trainers. The 3 countries with the most number of seats were Golden Eagle Federation, White Bear Nation, and Dragon Nation, which became increasingly powerful with its resurgence in recent decades. Time passed fast, and October approached. It was National Day 1. Surprisingly, Su Hao didn't particularly look forward to the National Day this year. Isn't it just a holiday? Isn't it just a week of holidays? I don't care. Oh, the arts and science stream students next door seemed to only have 3 days of holiday. Those guys in the Class 8 group chat were already as wild as beasts let loose. On the other hand, in the 3rd grade class chat, the classmates were completely calm. Did they dare not to train during the holiday? No. Whoever dared to idle would have to face the deadly gaze of the form teacher after returning to school. Suddenly, the mobile phone he put on the table vibrated again. Su Hao swiped to unlock the screen and saw that someone was tagging him. Lu Ren, at Su Hao wanna go to Sandbank Island for a barbecue party during National Day. Classmate A, you have to go. Classmate B, yeah, you must go. Classmate C, must go. Classmate X, yes, you must go. Since when did I become so popular? Su Hao touched his chin with a smile on the corner of his mouth. If old Su doesn't come, we can't see Silkworm Baby. Yeah, it's alright if old Su doesn't come, just let Silkworm Baby come. Su Hao was bewildered. What is this? We are not friends anymore. He typed rapidly on the phone and was decisively going to refuse. I am a diligent young man of the new age, fighting to become a Sprite Trainer. How can I waste my precious training time? Party. Not worth it. Gurgle. Gurgle, gle. Silkworm Baby gripped his hand with its mouth, preventing him from pressing send. Su Hao tried to tug at it. All right, he had no strength to pull it off. What's the matter? Gurgle, gurgle. What? You want to eat barbecue? You actually know the word barbecue. Ugh. Let me think about it. All right. As your reward for learning charging and roaring, I'll bring you. Silkworm Baby nodded, satisfied. But it felt that something was wrong. Su Hao deleted the words he was about to send out and slowly typed, I'm going. He added, my buddies invited me so enthusiastically, of course, I'm going. I have to go. Hey, yes I know, Silkworm Baby will go too. 1st of October. Cloudy. Su Hao rode a shared bike toward Green Peak Mountain Park. That was the agreed meeting point, but it was a bit far, 3 times the distance to Lake East Hill. He was going to take a taxi there, but looking at his mere hundreds of yuan remaining, he still quietly clicked open the bike-sharing app. Old Chen said that we have to remember our Sprite Trainer identity at any time, and can't be idle. Riding a bike is a way of exercise. It's good as well. As for Silkworm Baby? Naturally, it followed with its short little legs. It was a pity that, even when Su Hao pedaled as fast as a spinning wheel, Silkworm Baby still followed behind easily. The look of Silkworm Baby cutely struggling to catch up couldn't be seen anymore. Chapter 20. It was National Day, and there were quite a lot of people and cars outside. Fortunately, the Green Peak Mountain was a bit quieter. It wasn't a famous park. Apart from locals who occasionally came, there were largely no tourists from elsewhere. Su Hao parked his bike outside the park, locked it, and started walking toward Green Peak Mountain. He walked right toward the barbecue area. The barbecue area was on a platform halfway atop the mountain. On one side were the thicker woods, leading toward the top of the hill. The other side was open, and one could see in city, with its high skyscrapers and the wide river passing through the city. White clouds floated in the sky, and there was a little breeze. It was very pleasant. Lu Ren had already booked the location and prepared barbecue tools and ingredients with a few other classmates. Currently, they were already busying around the 2 barbecue stoves. Once Su Hao came, Silkworm Baby received a hearty welcome. The little guy looked so pleased with itself, it was as if it had lots of wine. Su Hao was annoyed. Look at you, can't you be as steady as your friend Little Charcoal Tortoise? Gurgle. Little Charcoal Tortoise was laying atop a large rock facing the city, steadily. Asleep? Su Hao was rendered speechless. Silkworm Baby left him to mingle happily with a few other sprites, such as Little Stone Elephant. Not everyone from their class came to the party. There were only about 20 that had signed up, but the newbie Sprite Trainers, like Chen Qi, Zhou Yuz, and Marionette, were actually all here with their sprites. Big Face Lu has good relations with the classmates, indeed. The barbecue meat's fragrance attacked Su Hao's nose. The party's atmosphere was very lively. Ordinary students, who were buried in the sea of exam questions, and Sprite Stream students, who worried about getting into Sprite universities, all briefly forgot about their troubles. Their worries turned into appetite. Gurgle. Gurgle, gurgle. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle.